Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Thursday, August 18th. Tonight, a nonprofit organization warns the rising number of small business bankruptcies is just the tip of the iceberg. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business cites its latest data on the issue. It says research shows 54% of business owners are yet to return to normal pre-pandemic revenue levels, and 62% are still carrying pandemic debt. CFIB is appealing for government support. It says more than 1 in 6 Canadian small business owners are currently considering going out of business. Some big news in Ontario, where Health Minister Sylvia Jones has announced a plan to try to stabilize the healthcare system. It aims to hire more health professionals, free up hospital beds, and reduce surgical wait lists. The province is looking at increasing privately delivered but publicly covered health services, and it plans to modify a program that can deploy nurses full-time across multiple hospitals in a region. The province also plans to spend up to $57.6 million over 3 years, this to increase the number of nurse practitioners working in long-term care homes. Turning to Quebec now, as efforts continue to encourage residents to get COVID-19 vaccine booster shots. The province is about to launch a vaccination campaign ahead of a potential new fall wave. This comes at a time when only 56% of residents have had their third dose. One infectious diseases specialist thinks the province should have been more strongly promoting boosters over the last 6 to 8 months instead of making a big push right now. Meanwhile, Pope Francis is weighing in on allegations of sexual assault by well-known Quebec Cardinal Marc Ouellet. He is declaring that there is not enough evidence to open a canonical investigation for sexual assault against Cardinal Ouellet. The pontiff made the statement today through the director of the Holy See press office. The press office says the investigator found no grounds to open an investigation, neither in the letter sent to the Pope by the accuser, identified as F, nor in other testimony collected. Cardinal Ouellet is facing allegations of sexual assault in a class action lawsuit filed this week in Quebec Superior Court. All right, well, this comes as the Supreme Court of Canada says it isn't getting involved in a property dispute that dates back to 2015. Developer Concord Pacific Acquisitions filed suit at that point. They allege a Singapore-based billionaire and his company backed out of a $1 billion deal. It was to jointly develop one of Vancouver's last parcels of waterfront land. Today's decision means lower court rulings in favor of the billionaire and his company will stand. A host of Canadian MPs are planning to visit Taiwan and Singapore this fall. This even though the House of Commons has yet to approve the trip's budget. Conservative MP and committee vice chair Randy Hoback says he wanted to consult Global Affairs Canada now before making the trip. This to potentially, quote, avoid antagonizing China. China regards Taiwan as its territory and imposed sanctions on U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in retaliation for her recent visit to the island. About 400 postcards were mailed out across the country this summer to honor the memory of soldiers killed during the Dieppe raid 80 years ago. The Juno Beach Center Association sent the cards to addresses where the soldiers lived prior to enlisting. About 5,000 Canadian soldiers took part in the raid, and more than 800 were killed in less than 10 hours of fighting. All right, turning our attention to the east, where plans are in the works to establish Nova Scotia's first national urban park. Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says a feasibility study will come first, but Ottawa has already committed to investing in buying land and infrastructure by the end of next year. Mr. Guilbeault and Provincial Environment Minister Tim Hullman also announced a series of agreements. They're aimed at protecting old-growth forests, conserving coastal lands, and creating an Atlantic Archipelago National Wildlife Area by late 2024. Well, after a 2-year hiatus, the Canadian National Exhibition is returning to Toronto. This, along with its unique and sometimes controversial foods available at the 18-day fair. Vendors are working to bounce back from the financial setbacks brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, and they will be offering such delicacies such as edible slime, mac and cheese lemonade, squid ink, Korean corn dogs, and ketchup and mustard ice cream. Along with the typical carnival foods like hot dogs and poutine, vendors will be offering more than 25 new far-out foods, including Tabasco-topped ice cream and flamin' hot Cheetos burgers. The Cheetos burgers sound appetizing. All right, well, up next, a look at investing and finfluencers. We'll be speaking with Brendan Caldwell, director of Caldwell Securities Ltd, on the rise of social trading after the break. And we're going to take a look at the growing influence of the online investing world and whether it's safe and reliable. Young investors continue to jump into the market following a boost in young people investing during the pandemic, which has brought out the rise of the finfluencer. Now, finfluencers are social media influencers that focus their platforms on investing and financial content. Meanwhile, as the world continues to become more connected online, social trading continues to grow in popularity. This comes as platforms like eToro and TD Ameritrade allow investors to share their trading strategies. But is the growing online investing world reliable and safe for your hard-earned money? Well, joining us now to tell us more about this is Brendan Caldwell, director of Caldwell Securities Ltd. Brendan, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Nima, always great to be here.
Now, today we're talking about the rise of finfluencers, Brendan, a very interesting term there. So what exactly do finfluencers do, and what are your thoughts around them?
Well, that's two big questions. Well, what they do is, like the conflated name implies, influence or endeavor to influence other investors around how they should deploy their money in the markets. What's hot, what's working, what's going on. So the way they can be influencers, internet influencers, social media influencers can work in all kinds of different areas, from shoes to skateboards. Why not finance as well? I'm mixed. I'm actually not as against it as you think a professional investment advisor would be. I do think that people need to realize that investing is about not just information, but the interpretation of information. And the information that you're getting from any source, professional and regulated like ours, or something you hear about in a cocktail party, or on the internet, is always going to be coming from a perspective. And at the very least, you're not going to be the first person to know it if somebody else is telling you that. So I think that one has to take everything one hears, either online or from the guy who said he made $1 million in such and such a stock, with a grain of salt.
All right. Well, on that point, what are your thoughts on the helpfulness of finfluencers for investors overall?
Inasmuch as it has engaged a generation in taking ownership of the economy by owning the best and most interesting ideas and getting them to deploy their money like owners, I think it's helpful. To the extent that it encourages straight up gambling and will leave a generation disaffected, because when this all turns bad, that they say, oh, you can't make any money in the market. I tried once when I was 23. That will be unhelpful. Ironically, I think that influencers, straight up influencers in terms of fashion, technology, other products, can actually be more effective in helping people with their portfolios, to the extent that you are among the first to hear about a new technology, product, fashion line, store that people like me, who are the wrong age, the wrong profession, wrong demographic, to know about the hottest new fashion store, the hottest new technology, perhaps. To the extent that you say, oh, that's cool, I wonder what company makes that. I really like that product and I use it. That will actually put people in, I think, much better stead for investment success, because you are among the first people to know the story. You are among the first people perhaps to invest based on that story. I think that's a much better strategy, to go from what you know, what you use, what you own, your own experience, rather than taking it secondhand from somebody who perhaps doesn't have your best interest at heart.
An interesting perspective to consider, Brendan. Now, just over a minute left here, but I want to switch gears to the other topic we're talking about today, social trading. So how does it work, and overall, is it safe and reliable for investors?
Well, The safe and reliable, as I suppose, under one's mattress or the bank. Let's start with that. Everything where you are investing with the hope of getting gains above the guaranteed government rate of return, there is risk involved. To the extent that in a social platform, whether it's social media or social anything, there is risks in all of that, even if you're not deploying your money. I mean, you've talked about the social media risks for a long time, but social financial risks add that element of investing one's money. And so taking advice from somebody whose track record purportedly has done such and such, which is really what the social financial interchange is supposed to be, it is a technological step up from the cocktail party advice. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it works, maybe that you're able to better track the performance of the people that you're on the social media with.
Welcome back. Now it's time for Forum Daily's weekly market update with Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. Take it away, Catherine.
Thank you, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly market recap. I am Catherine Murray. We are seeing North American equity markets trade mixed today, with U.S. markets trading a little bit lower, Canadian equities a little bit higher. We have seen some nice gains, though, recently in the U.S. equity markets. U.S. dollar is slightly firmer versus the euro, but lower versus the Canadian dollar. Gold is up by about 0.4%, and we're also seeing some strength in the base metals. WTI, or the price of oil, has been up by about 2% today, following a bigger than expected crude inventory drawdown. But keep in mind that it is on track for weekly losses. The main headline news this week surrounds the U.S. Federal Reserve minutes. That, of course, impacts so many equity markets and asset classes across North America, which is why I highlight it, even for Canadian investors, of course. But importantly here, the minutes highlighted the concern about over-tightening, meaning that the U.S. Federal Reserve might actually have to slow down the pace and or the size of rate hikes. Investors have absolutely been anticipating this, which is one of the reasons why we have seen the market move off of the lows, up by about 19% off of those lows, which we have, of course, seen some significant drawdowns in the equity markets. Now, other bullish narratives that we're witnessing as well, investors believe that we have seen peak inflation. Sentiment and positioning has been very low. The FT, in fact, reported that quant funds have closed out their short positions, meaning that they're in the market buying stocks. Closing out those positions means you have to go out and buy the stocks back. So that's obviously very supportive for the equity markets. And they're probably also not putting on additional short positions, meaning that the selling pressure is being somewhat alleviated. So all of that is added to the bullish narrative. B of A has a note out this week saying sentiment is no longer significantly negative. Earnings have generally come in a little bit better than feared. On the other hand, the bears out there would say that this is nothing more than a bear market bounce. Regarding earnings, as of late or this week, tech giant Cisco did beat on revenue as well as earnings, and also guided fiscal 2023 revenue ahead of consensus estimates. Management also said that they are not seeing any slowdown in demand. That stock's been up by about 6% today, and certainly is adding to the strength of the S&P as well as the Dow. On the retail front, Kohl's has cut their guidance, citing high inflation and dampened consumer demand. And Estee Lauder, their guidance was a little bit light, citing FX headwinds. Away from that, on the economic data front, U.S. existing home sales came in slightly below expectations, but they did have a positive surprise on the Philly Fed index, and initial claims fell once again. So taken together, probably the economic data in the United States a little bit softer, but still moving forward. In Canada, the TSX is slightly higher, but little changed on the week. As I mentioned, the Canadian dollar has been trading higher versus the US dollar. Earlier this week, though, the Canadian inflation number was 7.6%, in line with the consensus, and down from 8.1% in June. Now, that is the headline inflation number. Core inflation, as I'm sure you're feeling, did in fact tick up. So you're not wrong when you're paying for your food and your fuel. Economists believe that this reading will not deter the Bank of Canada or the BOC from raising rates at their next meeting, which is September the 7th. And also, that is actually what the bond market interpreted as well, with rates rising, or in fact, the spread between the 2 and the 10-year bonds in Canada widened over 50 basis points. So expect that rates here in Canada will likely continue to rise. On the stock news front, I would just highlight Air Canada. They announced that they will operate at 79% capacity of the pre-pandemic capacity. And on the global front, one item to really pay attention to is the divergence that we're seeing among central bankers, the divergence in policies. You've got some tightening, some loosening. The FOMC might ease the pace. The Bank of Canada looking to raise rates. ECB mulling over another big rate hike. That changes all of the foreign exchange markets, the currencies, how they trade, and of course the bond markets as well, and also what's supportive for equity markets. So a lot going on in terms of value, in terms of the valuations of asset classes. Lastly, I'll end here, Nima. Elon Musk, you may have seen, he's in the news again. It's not just about Twitter. He actually sent out a tweet suggesting that he might be interested in buying the English soccer team, Manchester United. It is publicly traded MANU, Man U. But then he sent another tweet out saying that he was just joking, but it impacts the stock price. I'll leave it there. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Catherine. Again, that was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here, which airs on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern only on the News Forum Network. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break with more news from around the world. Stay tuned. Ukraine's president is meeting with the president of Turkey and the UN Secretary General in Lviv. They're going to be discussing a wide range of issues related to Russia's war on his country. Volodymyr Zelensky and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will be discussing ways to expand the export of grain from Europe's breadbasket to the world's needy. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will focus on containing the volatile situation at a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine. Moscow and Kyiv have accused each other of shelling the complex. More violence in Afghanistan, where no one has claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing at a mosque in Kabul. Now, this comes as the death toll climbs to at least 21. A Taliban police spokesman says at least 33 others were wounded in the attack during evening prayers at the Sunni mosque. All right, turning to the U.S. now, where Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg has pled guilty in a Manhattan court to all 15 charges he was facing. Mr. Weisselberg admitted to evading taxes. This is part of a deal that could potentially make him a star witness against the company at a fall trial. In return, he has been sentenced to 5 months incarceration and 5 years probation. And he will have to pay nearly $2 million in taxes, penalties, and interest. The plea bargain also requires Mr. Weisselberg to testify truthfully as a prosecution witness when the Trump Organization goes on trial in October on related charges. Moving to a sentence that's being called shocking, even by Saudi standards of justice. A special court for terrorism and national security crimes has sentenced doctoral student Salma El-Shahab to 34 years in prison. This for spreading rumors on Twitter. The court is accusing her of disturbing public order, destabilizing the social fabric, and retweeting dissidents. Ms. El-Shahab was detained during a family vacation in January 2021. This was days before she planned to return to the United Kingdom. She told judges that she had been jailed for more than 285 days before her case was even referred to court. A recent move by the WHO is being applauded by the head of Africa's public health agency. He says he's really pleased that the World Health Organization is renaming the strains of the monkeypox disease. This to reduce concerns of stigmatization. The acting director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention spoke at a briefing on Thursday. He said he is very glad that the strains now will be called Clade 1 and Clade 2 rather than the names of African regions. Tragedy in Corsica, where several people were killed when a violent thunderstorm hit the French island this morning. Winds gusted to more than 220 kilometers an hour in some areas. Several ships have been grounded and wrecked. In northern Italy, a violent overnight storm forced the closure of a train line southeast of Genoa. This was after high winds carried changing booths and other items from nearby beaches onto the tracks, damaging the electrical circuits. Dangerous weather is also hitting New Zealand, where hundreds of people have been forced from their homes. The island country continues to be pelted with heavy rain that has caused landslides, fallen trees, and floodwaters to block roadways. The stormy weather has also forced some schools to close, airlines to cancel flights, and businesses to shutter. The military has been called in after the Mai Tai River flooded and prompted the evacuation of about 230 homes in the town of Nelson. More rain is in the forecast. In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz says the government will temporarily lower taxes on natural gas. This to ease the financial pressure on people struggling with soaring energy costs. The chancellor said his government decided to lower the value-added tax on gas from 19% to 7% until the end of March 2024. Natural gas prices have been rising since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. LA Lakers star LeBron James is now the highest-paid player in NBA history. His agent says the 37-year-old James has agreed to a 2-year, $97.1 million contract extension through the 2024 to 2025 season. The new deal means the 18-time All-Star will make $46.7 million this season. All right, well, the 22-year-old king of TikTok finally has another title, Italian. Influencer Kabi Lame took his oath of Italian citizenship on Wednesday. Mr. Lame moved to Italy from Senegal when he was an infant, but because of Italy's strict citizenship laws, he hadn't become an Italian citizen until now. His situation and those of thousands of young people that are also with non-Italian parents made headlines. This was after Mr. Lame became the most followed TikTok creator in June. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time on Forum Daily News.